$5 million one-time capex generates $60 to $70 million of revenue on an annual basis.
Wow.
That is software economics
Yeah.
in biotech.
Yo, Karl, what's up?
Man, all sorts of good and bad things, I guess. We're recording this on Monday, April 7th, and the markets have lost $9 trillion in value since last week. So people are freaking out. What's up with you?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know. Let's definitely dig into that. But a fun, friendly biotech event I went to this past weekend. It wasn't an event. It was a birthday of two incredibly intelligent, I would call them citizen scientists because they have amazing jobs at big media companies, but they were OG GenSpace community. And when GenSpace moved out of their original space, they rented the space and worked from there. So they have their own thing going on in this incredible space in Brooklyn. We celebrated their birthday.
That's awesome.
It was really cool. So GenSpace, of course, holds a special place in our heart. That's where I met you, Karl, in that building. So I was going around telling everyone, like, back in my day, when this used to be GenSpace, it's where I met Karl. I met my friend Ed, and you two helped get me to the trajectory of my career where I am now. And it was this one event in this space in Brooklyn. And wow, it was incredible to think about the past and the present, see how things have evolved, and see some people in our space. Our dear friend and friend of the pod, Elizabeth Henaf, professor at NYU School of Engineering, was there. And she was talking about all the great work she's doing. She's on a bit of a sabbatical right now, working in the intersection of art and biology, and has an exhibit at Biobat. So, Karl, we have to go see this because I'll tease the fact that it basically brings the Gowanus Canal Superfund site to the eye of the beholder. I felt like it was peak Brooklyn biotech, so I just had a good time. How about you? How was your weekend?
So beyond just thinking about what's going on in the financial markets, I had a very calm weekend. I had dinner with some friends, and then my son Felix was here. But we tried to chill out, and I've been trying to keep the news at arm's length. But it's hard not to because everybody's talking about it. And no matter what you look at online, someone's talking about how the markets are reacting to the Trump tariffs. One thing that has been in the news is this idea that so far to date, biopharma has been exempt from tariffs. But during the first Trump administration, there was a lot of talk of targeting foreign produced medicines. And in fact, I'm going to link to a document from PwC about this idea. And the challenge with it, and we've talked about it in the past on the podcast, is that there are a lot of drugs that are in shortage. And not the reason that those drugs are in shortage is that they're produced abroad, but there is so many drugs that are produced abroad, and many of the ingredients that are produced that drugs rely on are also produced abroad because they're not profitable to make in the United States or even in North America. So to add to the anxiety, not that I want to add to anxiety, thinking about tariffs being added to medicines that are not produced in the United States is just another level of, I don't know, Karl going deep on the tariffs. And I have other things I'd rather talk about than that.
Okay. But they are not exempt anymore. So pharma is now subject to tariffs.
No, they're so far. I mean, here we are 4 days into it. So far, they are exempt, but there is talk about tariffing foreign-made medicines as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually good for some of our friends in the biotech industry who can produce medicines here in the United States using precision fermentation technology. So one person's tragedy is another person's victory, I guess. I don't know. I think that's the whole, I don't want to say rationale because a lot of things have been pretty shoot from the hip, but the idea is to have the U.S. economy be more resilient within the United States. Will it work? Let's see. I hope. I mean, that's all we can do. Obviously vote, and there's more things we can do for sure, like talking about these things on a podcast. So here we are. But yeah, I know it's a tough time, but there's other things going on that we can dig into a bit.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to point out that I came across a Reddit thread last week that was all about scientific ideas that haven't gotten enough traction. And I thought it was really interesting because they range from really obscure, only people on this podcast would understand things around human-induced pluripotent cells, mapping the human genome, to types of cancer being cured by immunotherapy, which is something that doesn't get talked about enough. But it was like a rabbit hole that I went down last year because we had a scare with my mom thinking that she might have had cancer. My message to her consistently was the way cancer is treated today is very different than it was 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, but even in her mind, the way people used to treat cancer with chemotherapy, radiotherapy, it's very, very different now. There was something super fun on there in terms of this idea that in the 1990s, Guinness introduced these cans that had these spheres in them that contained nitrogen. The beer would always have a certain amount of nitrogen in it, and it gives canned Guinness a very nice taste, almost the taste that you would get if you went to a bar and you got it on tap. So it's fun to see those. I'll make sure that I link to it in the notes. Not a lot of things that we necessarily talk about when it comes to the use of biotechnology for things like building bricks or going into space or biomanufacturing. But these things, which we know fly under the radar, weren't really mentioned. So maybe the stuff we talk about is even further under the radar at this point.
Yeah, I mean, some of those are under the radar, maybe under the mainstream radar, but definitely on our radar. The induced potent cells, isn't that what BitBio is doing?
Yeah, among other things.
Yeah, among other things. So these have not gotten enough traction. They are there. They need the support or resources or manpower to really scale up. So it'd be interesting to see how they scale up and how they become more available. What is that? It's like the future is here, just not evenly distributed.
Yeah, it's William Gibson quote.
Yeah, so here we are. All this stuff is here. It's just how are we scaling them up and getting to the hands of the people? I mean, I'm going to have to say this because I'm such a fan. You're going to hate me because I keep talking about common side effects. Great show. But
I have to binge watch it. Yeah,
you have to binge watch. If you have the time, if you carve out the time, it's definitely worth binge watching. But I watched it weekly. The whole idea is that if you have a cure for disease or for a lot of diseases, that puts a strain and makes pharma obsolete, health insurance, the healthcare system. So it's interesting. Is there an invisible force, or maybe not so invisible, that's saying, hey, look, these cures, even though they're there, are going to put us in financial ruin if we don't have the money coming in to treat disease versus just curing it, because cures reduce TAM, which is the total addressable market. So if you cure a disease, then you can't really sell your drug that treats it anymore. So anyway, I know that's morbid, but it's something that's talked about. I mean, in the pharma industry, if like you're like, oh, I have a cure, they're like, okay, that's great. Yeah. But then no one wants to admit it. No one wants to be like, oh no, we don't want to cure disease. But maybe there's something happening with, again, an invisible hand in pharma that does that. Anyway, sorry to sound morbid.
No, I think it's worth talking about it just a little bit, because what it reminds me of is we talked about the book, The Genesis Machine, co-authored by Amy Webb and Andrew Hessel. Part of the book included a bunch of different scenarios in terms of what it would be like if people lived longer, what it would be like to go to a restaurant and order very clean meat that maybe is produced locally. And so having those kinds of scenarios is super important, and thinking about what does it mean to have cured disease. I think we're a long way from that. I think I've said in the past, the statistic is something like 80% of diseases don't have a treatment at this point. So being able to think through what it looks like when all diseases are treatable, and what does it do to companies that are focused on treating diseases? Do they go into the longevity space? Mm-hmm. I did read a thread from someone we know on LinkedIn this weekend where he was using Ozempic, one of the GLP drugs, to control weight. And then there was someone else who said, you need to be really careful with these. They lower your bone density and your muscle mass. He answered that he wasn't having those side effects yet, and that he was taking it just to get to a certain weight. But it was super interesting to think of what the unintended consequences are of new medicines being put on the market, and also this idea of curing people. How do you change a company to be a longevity health company as opposed to treating disease?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like pharma is all unintended consequences. It's just so hard to really bottle biology at the stage and to create drugs that do their job and then they just go away and don't affect anything else in your body for everyone. So that's interesting. But the longevity space is very cool. It is, I would say, a great flip in thinking for pharma. So instead of, again, curing disease, you're saying, let's look at longevity. How do we make people live longer? Because if they live longer, then you also have a customer that's there for longer and they can continue paying for any type of drugs that help with longevity. But our guest today, who is helping create new nutraceuticals and different types of vitamins and supplements, is Ilan Sobel of BioHarvest. Karl, you met Ilan Sobel at an event and just connected with him. What was going on?
Yeah, we talk a lot about biology being infrastructure. And so what that means is that biology isn't just a tool for making pharmaceuticals or food, but it's really where materials, computation, and all manufacturing are going to take place. I went to a biopharma event last year, and you and I have a strategy. We've had 2 podcasts where we talk about going to meetings. Maybe we should hold another one before we get into conference season. But before we go to an event, I always look at who the speakers are, what their companies are, and I do my homework to figure out who do I really want to invest time in. And Ilan and his company BioHarvest were really interesting because they have unlocked the secrets of plant cells. And they're able to do biomanufacturing using plant cells. And they've got this really interesting direct to consumer business model. So it checked off 2 boxes for me. Number 1, interesting business model, because I love new business models applied to biotech. I think we're going to see a lot more of those. And 2, this idea of using plant cells as factories is also fascinating and works within what we talk about here at Grow Everything. So I stalked Ilan at this conference, listened to his presentation, and then went and introduced myself to him and immediately said, you need to come on the podcast. We like what you're doing. And you're going to see, as you listen to the podcast, we asked some really good questions for him. And we were very strategic in some of the questions. And I think he was surprised by the questions that we asked him. So I think it's a fascinating episode. So with that, let's let Ilan take it away.
Today's podcast is sponsored by SynBioBeta. If you're a Grow Everything listener, you know that biology is the most important technology of the century. You also know that we're huge fans of the SynBioBeta conference. I've been attending since 2014, and it's my favorite conference of the year. There's no faster way to get up to speed on synthetic biology and its impact across industries. This year, we're going to be joined by inventor Dean Kamen, futurist legend Peter Diamandis, and Brian Johnson, among many others. SynBioBeta is where biology meets opportunities. So I hope you'll join us in San Jose, May 5th through May 8th to see how biology is transforming every industry. To get $400 off, use the promo code GROWEVERYTHING when you register at synbiobeta.com. I hope to see you there. Ilan Sobel of BioHarvest, we are so happy to have you on the Grow Everything podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Karl, and it's a real pleasure to join you and Erum on this podcast. Been looking forward to it all day.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, why don't we do some background questions, and we'd love to get into asking you about BioHarvest and its technologies. You have a very interesting background. You've worked at big global corporations like Coca-Cola, and then you were at a company that was purchased by Anheuser-Busch, which at some point we'd love to talk to you about. But what inspired you to move into the biotech industries, particularly with BioHarvest?
Wow, that's a deep question to start with. Inspiration. I really believe that inspiration connects to the spiritual world that we believe in. Things happen in life for a reason. Being an observant person from a religious perspective, I really believe that God doesn't always open doors, but God shows us the keyhole and gives us a glimpse into the keyhole, and we have to decide whether we open the door or not. And at 45 years old, after an amazing 18 years career with Coca-Cola International, spanning multiple countries, 12 years in Asia, 3 years in Africa, and 3 years in the US, and then bringing my family here to Israel, moving from fast-moving consumer goods, the front of the airplane to the back of the airplane, and the Four Seasons Hotel in Atlanta, which is a beautiful hotel, to the Red Rooftop Motel in Atlanta. I don't want to be disparaging, but it's not the Four Seasons. I went into startup world, and together with 2 amazing partners, 2 guys much younger than me, we built a big data IoT software company that we sold to Anheuser-Busch InBev, worked with AB InBev, and got to the age of 45, and I was very much in, I would say, the spiritual stage of my career. With 3 teenage children, I wanted to do something that was going to change the world. I said the next, let's call it 15 years, I wanted to dedicate everything, all this amazing skills and experiences and capabilities that I had learned in the past, let's call it 20 years. I wanted to double down on that and use that as a foundation to, as a father, parent, use those capabilities to change the world in some way that would leave somewhat of a legacy, at least something that my children would be proud of. And I was shown a keyhole, and I was introduced to this company called BioHarvest Sciences as an investor.
Interesting.
And I came to the company and I was just blown away. I saw a gold mine of R&D, just an R&D gold mine, amazing IP, technology, know-how, scalability of the technology, clinical trials, top quality people, largely a female leadership team that had put in place fantastic building blocks of a technology that I looked at, and just given my background and knowledge in the food industry, I felt could really change the world. After a significant diligence, and I come from a pretty humble background, and whether it's $5,000 investment or $50,000 investment, it's the same due diligence. And having done many due diligences in my life in the Coca-Cola company, I go pretty deep in due diligence. And I went super deep, and every time I went deep, they just came out with the goods. High quality answers, very, very robust thinking, and quality all around. I ended up investing in the company. I drove them crazy during the diligence process. I really did. They were super patient with me. I was really fortunate that at the end of the process, once I'd actually invested in the company, at the time, the CEO of the company, who's an amazing man and partner today of mine, Dr. Zaki Rakib, he's the chairman of the company and he runs our CDMO business today. And we've partnered together in the last 5 years in building the business. I was very fortunate that he turned around to me and absolutely shocked me and said, listen, you drove us crazy during the due diligence process, but I realized I need a professional CEO to come and run this business. Would you be interested? Karl and Erum, my heart stopped because I just didn't expect that. Going through the diligence, I knew the company had some level of operational risk because it really was an R&D company, but I really believed that the company could figure it out because the technology was so strong. But I didn't realize that the mirror was going to be turned towards me and I was going to be the person that had the opportunity to be able to mine that gold in the gold mine, that R&D gold, and bring it to the marketplace. And it didn't take me a long time after I was offered the role of CEO to come back and said, you know what? I really want this because I believe in this technology. I believe that with 8 billion, 9 billion people in the world today, that we can't feed the world with the current way of agriculture. We've got to bring breakthrough technology to be able to bring the next generation of therapeutic solutions all the way through to different ways of bringing nutrition to the marketplace, given the very, very challenging world that we live in as it relates to global climate change, as it relates to the different exposure that human beings have today, as it relates to toxins and toxicity, etc. I felt that keyhole was getting bigger and bigger, and I better walk through that door. I'd invested in the company, and now was the time to really take the keys and to be able to bring this technology to the marketplace. And that's what we've done now. Fast forward 5 years with our botanical synthesis platform technology, we've been able to scale the business. We earlier this week announced our financial results as a NASDAQ listed company today, public company, delivering north of $25 million of revenue and on the path to targeted adjusted EBITDA profitability towards the end of this year. It's been an amazing journey. And most importantly, the technology has allowed us to really generate transformational changes in people's health and wellness with the compounds that we produce from our technology. And I'm sure we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But we've been able to drive significant, what I call human utility value, which is driving transformational positive changes in people's health and wellness, leveraging the power of the plant kingdom through our technology. And importantly, when you drive human utility value, the shareholder value follows. And that's really how we roll here, and the DNA of the company and what really drives us every single day.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. So you were doing the due diligence and then flipped around and you were being diligenced to become CEO. And then here we go, 5 years later, and congratulations on the success. This is very incredible. Can you tell us a little bit more about botanical synthesis? What does that mean? What is the process behind it? We'd love to learn a little bit more.
So with our botanical synthesis technology, we've been able to really drive a position in the market to be recognized as the global leader in plant cell biology. This technology allows us to unlock the secrets of cellular plant biology better than any other company out there. So let me help you understand very simply what is botanical synthesis. Simply, we start with the plant. We take the plant once. And we've developed a platform technology where we can take pretty much any plant in the plant kingdom. We take the plant once. We understand exactly where inside the plant are the cells that produce the critical phytonutrients or phytomedicinal compounds. We take those cells and we conduct hundreds, if not thousands, of experiments where we change the food that we feed the cells, we change the temperature, we change lighting, and a number of other variables that let's just say, we won't get into. They're in our black IP box. At this stage, we focus on getting these cells to do two things. One, to grow and produce the exact mirror of the phytonutrients or phytomedicinal compounds that are found in the plant. Two, what we do is we focus on one or two molecules that we look to increase by an order of magnitude versus what's found in the plant. So, for example, in our Vinea red grape cell powder, we increase the levels of a very unique molecule called piceid resveratrol. We're the only company in the world today that produces piceid resveratrol from a red grape, together with all the other polyphenols, at a commercial and industrial scale, because we figured out how to increase the levels of piceid resveratrol 100 times more than what's found in the actual red grape itself. So we call this magnification. So we mirror and we magnify at this stage when we're working with the cells. And it's important for all the listeners out there to understand that what we do is non-GMO. We do not in any way change the molecular structure of the actual molecule compounds. We're just changing the environment. We're optimizing the environment for the cells to do what we want them to do. At this stage, we lock the cell bank. And we have a cell bank and we never go back to the plant. We have not been back to that red grape literally now for about 12, 13 years. We've now, as a company, mastered is the ability to take those cells and figure out how to take that cell from a petri dish and grow that cell in an industrial scale bioreactor. We're talking north of 1,000 liters. These are cells in liquid suspension. So you take it from a petri dish in solid media to liquid suspension in large industrial scale bioreactors with shear forces. And we figured out how to condition the cell to be able to, in a way, toughen it up, make it stronger so that it can go into this liquid environment, can deal with all the challenges of shear forces, can multiply many times, and in 18 to 21 days, the cells grow and they elicit those critical phytomedicinal compounds. Then we harvest the cells and we're left with an amazingly soluble, bioavailable end compound. There's no insecticides, there's no herbicides, there's no fungicides. We grow it in a biological facility. It's a clean product. There's no solvents. We simply dry this rich mud into a final powder. And here you can see a capsule of our red grape cell powder, which today we sell $25 million in 2024 and doubled the business every year for the last 3 years. Really what we're able to do with this technology is be able to grow these phytonutrients, phytomedicinal compounds consistently with economic viability because we increase the levels through the magnification. And we have unique IP. There's patents. So in a way, what we've done is we've solved the three problems of why our friends at Big Pharma walked away from the plant kingdom, because we all know that pharmaceutical companies started 60, 70 years ago with the plant. They realized it's too difficult to deal with the phytonutrients or phytomedicinal compounds in the plants because there's no consistency in nature. Plants live in an ever-changing ecosystem. With weather changes, the phytonutrients change. In addition, the really important phytomedicinal compounds that are so critical for our overall health and wellness, they're found at such tiny levels inside the plant that it's just not economically viable. And then you can't patent nature. So that's why pharmaceutical companies went to chemical synthesis and other types of biological syntheses. So our technology, which we call botanical synthesis or botanical cellular synthesis, we solve these three problems. for the pharmaceutical companies, for cosmetic companies that are looking for new compounds, for the next generation of cosmetic solutions, all the way through to the companies in the nutrition space, where through one of the components, through our contract development manufacturing organization, we're working with an amazing company called Tate & Lyle, who's the largest sweetener company in the world, to work together with them as partners to develop the next generation of non-nutritive, non-GMO natural sweetener. Because at the end of the day, stevia has only gone so far as acceptance in the American palate. And there are amazing sweet protein plants out there that are just waiting for our technology to mirror, magnify, and multiply to be able to democratize these compounds. And ultimately, this technology is able to deliver the North Star of the company, where we're all about developing life-changing compounds and democratizing these life-changing compounds by providing access to hundreds of millions of consumers and changing their health and wellness, and doing this in a way from a manufacturing perspective that we preserve the planet for generations to come. Because in the technology I've just described, we utilize a micro fraction of the land and a fraction of the water and the energy. So ultimately, this technology has the capability to really drive the nutritional needs of a growing global population, all the way through to developing the next generation of therapeutic solutions for specific indications that today, let's call it chemical synthesis or basically biological solutions, have not been able to solve, and are still significant unmet needs for these conditions.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. One of the things we talk a lot about here on Grow Everything is the fact that people want natural solutions, they want natural ingredients, but they don't realize that we don't have enough of an environment to grow those. And the fact that you guys are able to do this in a very small facility with limited water use, I think just shows the importance of what you guys are doing. You talked about those kind of environmental challenges associated with growing large volumes of plants. What about economic challenges? Let's talk about that just for a minute. What makes it hard to grow a lot of plants that you have to harvest for very small amounts of active compounds?
It's a great question, Karl, and it starts with the philosophy and the North Star of our company. We're focused on developing, manufacturing, and democratizing these life-changing compounds. And to democratize a life-changing compound, you have to have scale, and you have to be able to get to affordability levels, whether it's as a nutritional play or as a therapeutic solution play. So when you look at just basically the pure economics, the most critical phytomedicinal compounds, and there are multiple examples out there that are so important for the human body that are utilized as APIs today in important pharmaceutical therapeutic solutions, they found at such minuscule levels that from an economic perspective, to grow these particular compounds utilizing conventional agriculture, and with the challenges that you have with conventional agriculture because of the nature of the world and ecosystems that we live in, it's just the economics don't make sense to be able to democratize these compounds. So this is why our technology is so critical, from nutrition all the way to the next generation of therapeutic solutions, because today we are in 1,000-liter plus bioreactors. We've doubled the size of our bioreactors in the last, let's call it 15 months. Our plan is to double them again in the next 18 months, and then to double again, and ultimately to achieve a level of industrial scale of growing plant cells with unique solubility and bioavailability to be able to really democratize compounds that from plants, and be able to really unlock those secrets that are contained in the plant kingdom, utilizing our technology to be able to change the world. And to do that, democratization is totally linked to affordability. That's really driven by the North Star and really the values of the company, and why we come to BioHarvest Sciences every day to do what we do.
Yeah, that's definitely game changing, world changing. I'm excited to talk more about the compounds. The red grape, what do you call it, like a supplement? Is that what it is?
So let's step back. We developed the red grape cell compound. It's a combination of piceid resveratrol, as I explained. It's called piceid resveratrol. An interesting area. I think many of your listeners would have heard about resveratrol. It's a very, very hot compound out there. But unlike human beings, resveratrol is not created equal. And we produce the gold standard, the Rolls Royce of resveratrol, called piceid. Piceid resveratrol is a glycoside. It has an extra sugar molecule attached to it. It's 25 times more water soluble than regular resveratrol, which we call naked resveratrol, because it doesn't have that extra glycoside sugar molecule attached to it. And through our actual clinical trial work, we last in the body for at least 12 hours, with a peak after 1 hour and a peak after 5 hours. And regular resveratrol is in and out the body 34 hours. So we produce the gold standard Rolls Royce because of unique solubility and unique bioavailability. As a science-based company, we've done multiple clinical trials on this particular compound. And importantly for the audience, it's anchored in the hero molecule called piceid resveratrol, but we also have all the polyphenols, which are so critical from a synergistic effect, including catechin, quercetin, anthocyanins, and tannins that work together like an orchestra, like a symphony and orchestra. And as a science-based company, we've done multiple clinical trials, double-blind, placebo, and we were able to demonstrate the ability, after taking one capsule every single day for 90 days, the ability to significantly increase FMD, flow-mediated dilations of one's arteries. And with more arterial dilation, you have more blood flow. So we are positioned in the market today, and from more than 8,500 verified reviews and a 4.8 out of 5 as the king of blood flow. We increase arterial dilation significantly. You have more blood flow in the 60,000 miles of arteries, capillaries, and veins in your body. People don't realize you have 60,000 miles of arteries, capillaries, and veins.
Yep.
Figure that out. And you want those arteries, capillaries, and veins to be working like a 4-lane highway, not like a little side road. So with the increased arterial dilation, you have more blood flow. With more blood flow, you have more oxygen, more nutrients flowing to the body, tissue, cells, and organs. And from that, you have more physical energy, more blood flow to the peripheral part of the brain. Goodbye brain fog. You have much more mental alertness. You have the maintenance of blood pressure within already normal ranges. In addition, we've been able to demonstrate the ability to reduce oxidation of LDL cholesterol and oxidative damage to one's cells. We decided as a company, it got to a point where we had to make a decision. Do we take it down the nutraceutical route, dietary supplement route, or do we go down the pharmaceutical drug route? And after spending $100 million in our technology platform, we wanted to monetize the technology. Our shareholders needed to get some level of return on investment. And we decided at the time to take our red grape cell compound down the dietary supplement route. And hence in 2021, we launched in the US. And previously, we had launched in Israel, which is our manufacturing and R&D base. The rest is history as we've scaled this compound. And in fact, our second compound is another really interesting compound, which is from olive cells. In a way, you think about it, our red grape cell is really the power of the French paradox. We all know the French paradox and what that's all about. In the case of our olive cells, where we have the highest levels of verboscoside, go back to the magnification, we magnified verboscoside to the highest levels in the world. And we know from all our research, we grow the highest levels of verboscoside in the world. And verboscoside is a very powerful anti-inflammatory polyphenol from the olive. We're focusing this on liver health, and we've just actually released to the marketplace some really favorable results of in vitro research where we took human liver cells and we applied our olive verboscoside cells, and we saw a significant reduction in fat levels. So today, NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, is really being spoken about more than ever, with more than 100 million American adults dealing with NAFLD. So this is basically how we've applied the technology in a direct-to-consumer business, which is very much a subscription-based business. We only go direct-to-consumer. It's very important, that relationship with the consumer. Then importantly, in February last year, we, in line with that North Star that I talked about of the company, to be able to literally develop, manufacture, and democratize these life-changing compounds in order to democratize and impact the lives of hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah. Yesterday, I went to this Future of Biotech Summit, and the professor of Harvard of biology and genetics, Dr. David Sinclair, was talking about his regimen of using supplements. And he mentioned polyphenols and the different things that he either purchases or he makes because he has the ability to make it. But one thing I haven't heard from you, and I'm really interested if it's intentional or maybe you're not focusing on the marketing, but is the concept of longevity. This is something that's very trendy, at least here in the United States, where people are looking at their supplement stack. Even that term is something that I think a lot of people are starting to come to use because they're like, what are the different supplements I need to take in order to really optimize my health rather than curing disease? What's the next level? Have you thought about this? How does this influence the supplements that you guys are making? And also, you said direct to consumer. We're very interested in that.
So, Erum, that's a great question. And when you actually understand what are the most critical components of our body's operating mechanism that is inextricably linked to longevity, I'm not going to surprise you when I tell you it's blood flow. And let me help you understand, as the body ages, and unfortunately that aging process starts at like 30 years old, our body starts to produce less nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator. And as you hit that age of 30, the body starts to produce less and less of nitric oxide. The body hits you again and produces more endothelial 1, which is ET1. ET1 is a vasoconstrictor. So what's unique about our Vinia red grape cell product is that we have a unique double mechanism of action where when Vinia enters the human body in those 60,000 miles of arteries, capillaries, and veins, they are all lined with endothelial cells. And the endothelial cells, when they start to receive all the phytonutrients from Vinia, they start to produce more nitric oxide, which is the good stuff, and less endothelial 1, which is the bad stuff, which is why we get such an amazing level of increase in arterial dilation. And that blood flow is so critical because at the end of the day, the more blood flow you have, the more oxygen and nutrients, and it's a critical component of longevity, giving people more physical energy. The amount of consumers that take our products in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, they're operating like they were 50 years old. It's a game changer because you're giving them more oxygenation, and oxygenation is so critical from a physical energy perspective, from an overall cognitive thinking perspective, more blood flow to the brain, goodbye toxins. You need the blood flow to remove cellular toxins. Cellular toxins is what gives you the brain fog, all the way through to oxidative damage. As you get older, your cells have oxidative damage, and more blood flow, you reduce the oxidative damage. So we very much fit in as an anchor into the longevity space, all underpinned by what is the most critical part of our body's operating mechanism. It's not necessarily gut health, it's blood flow. Because if you don't have good blood flow, you're severely challenged for all the reasons I've articulated. And then going to your point around nutrient stacking, we see it time and time again with consumers, many having 5 or 10 supplements. The bottom line is you can put all of those supplements into your body. Firstly, they need to be soluble and bioavailable. Let's assume they're soluble and bioavailable. And I would tell all the listeners out there, make sure you check with your favorite supplement the solubility levels, the bioavailability levels. For example, Vinia is heavily solubilized in your intestinal tract. And we move within 20 minutes, we move through the plasma, through the membrane into the blood plasma. And this is all demonstrated in our clinical trials. And that movement gives you amazing bioavailability in the body for at least 12 hours. So solubility and bioavailability. But what's critical with those other nutrients that you're putting into your body is if you don't have good blood flow, they don't flow to the body's tissue, cells, organs. You got to have all those highways working to get those nutrients to all the different parts of the body cells and the tissues and organs from a broader longevity perspective, and specifically to almost be that critical carrier of all the other nutrients to your body that you're investing in to improve your overall longevity.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, I think it's funny because Erum and I were just talking about this last night about David Sinclair and his nutrition stack or his supplement stack. At the beginning of the pod, you were talking about orchestration, really orchestrating the cell growth. And one of the things that we talk about is that so many biotech companies just focus on invention, they focus on the science. And it sounds like when you came on board at BioHarvest, there was some commercialization, but few companies master this orchestration of having the science, developing the science, scaling the science, and then orchestrating the marketing side of it. How has BioHarvest approached this orchestration challenge?
Well, that's a great question, Karl. It's interesting when you step back and you dimensionalize, and it's always easy to do this in a revisionist way. After the company's been around since 2007, so we're nearly 18 years old. My history's been the last 5 years. And you look at what the impact of the sweat and toil and what we've done. People often say to me, on pretty much one SKU, how did you generate $25 million of sales? We have more than 50,000 active subscribers taking this product every single day. How did you guys do it? You must be really good at your marketing. And I say to them, thank you. It's very nice. We appreciate that. But our marketing is good. But what really drives that commercialization, or you call it orchestration, or ability to execute, operationalize, as I call it, which is such a critical challenge for so many biotech companies out there because their ecosystem is very narrow. And I'll come back to that in a second. What has driven that for us is the power of the technology and the impact of the life-changing compounds that we're able to produce with the technology. If we didn't have a life-changing compound, you can't orchestrate or operationalize or commercialize. It's too difficult. And you're not going to be able to build a e-commerce machine direct to consumer to literally tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of consumers. It's all anchored in the power of the compound, and power of the compound is anchored in really the gift that our PhD plant cell biologists have really given us and have developed in the context of the end-to-end technology system that we've built. It's important to really memorialize that the ability to commercialize is really anchored in the power of the compound that you're developing and its impact ability to really change people's lives in a meaningful way. And then, yes, some good marketing people that appreciate that, understand that, and have a DNA that want to change the world, because it takes a lot to do this in a company that's growing. I mean, I like to say we've climbed Mount Everest and back 5 times in the last 5 years. When you're doubling your business every year and you've got to scale technology, in the last 15 months, we've done something that probably in my career is something that I'm most proud of, where we fully digitized our biological facility. We have north of 100 bioreactors. These are 1,000-liter plus bioreactors. Imagine that. And being able to control and manage each bioreactor. So we digitized every single biological metric in our facility, all up to the cloud. And that allows us to build a digitized blueprint for end-to-end manufacturing of our compounds that allows us to drive optimization. And optimization is all about managing potency and yield in order to actually build a business that is economically viable so that you can democratize those compounds.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, we definitely want to dig into some of the manufacturing. And one of the things I just wanted to point out is that we appreciate that you're saying that the performance of the compound is really what drives. And in our world of growing everything, looking at biology, looking at plants, sustainability is at the core. And we say it's table stakes. Now, what is the functionality? What really drives people to buy? And I'm very excited to hear that you led with that. It's something you want to dig into. And a majority of our conversation so far has been about the nutraceutical, and you mentioned medicinal botanical synthesis. So can you tell us a little bit more about on the pharmaceutical side? You're making APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients, or you're making formulations. How do you play in the pharmaceutical space?
So through our CDMO business today, which is our contract development and manufacturing organization, which we formed in February of last year, where we opened up the technology to the giants of industry. And we're dealing with pharmaceutical companies, cosmetic companies, nutraceutical companies, and nutrition companies. This is where the application of our technology through these really deep anchor partnerships, similar to what we've done with Tate and Lyle in the context of developing the next generation of non-nutritive sweeteners. Similarly, we have a very important partnership with a company that we were under heavy NDA, which we can't talk about, but I can talk to you a little bit about it in the context of your question. It's a NASDAQ-listed pharmaceutical company, and they had a real challenge regarding a specific component of a drug that they produce, which is botanically sourced, and was very challenged from an overall, let's call it, supply chain perspective from a number of different reasons, including geopolitical reasons. And they came to us and said, look, we believe that your technology is able to produce this specific enzyme, and we want to have control over the supply chain. We want to have ability to have consistency and predictability where we're not dealing with the forces of Mother Nature. We want to be able to have control from a geopolitical sensitivity perspective and a pricing sensitivity perspective. We want to have patents. We want to have the patents ownership to the composition. So we have partnered with this company. We have a 3-phase process as part of our end-to-end R&D process. Phase 1 is where we do the tissue culture work, and we're now deep into the tissue culture work to be able to finalize the cell bank and be able to demonstrate that we can produce the specific enzyme that they're looking for. And then we move to phase 2, where we go into small-scale bioreactors, and then phase 3, where we go into large industrial bioreactors, and then we move to a royalty-based partnership model. So we're knee-deep in it. We're well down the path in our phase 1 process on being able to build the cell bank to generate the enzyme that ultimately will be used as a critical API into that particular drug. And then importantly here, we produce ultimately biological material. So our material can basically, from a flexibility perspective and regulatory perspective, can be utilized across multiple different regulatory paths, whether it's botanical drug path or biologic path. We have quite a lot of flexibility based on the nature of the technology.
That's amazing, Ilan. Earlier, you'd said about opening up or democratizing the technology, and that is through your CDMO, right?
Correct. And the way it works is basically with our key partners, we call them anchor partners because these are real deep partnerships. We go from plant to final compound in 2 years. It's quick. And we're getting quicker and quicker in doing this through utilization of AI. We use AI in a very deep way in a number of stages from an R&D perspective. So think from plant to compound in 2 years. The R&D process ranges anywhere from $2.5 million to $4.5 million end to end for the R&D process. And then we move to a final stage where we're producing, manufacturing at scale that particular compound through a unique royalty-based partnership model. Well, we've seen since we've started, and it's interesting, Carl, the genesis of this was for 4 years. Every month I'd get a phone call from another pharma company, nutraceutical company, cosmetic company saying, can you do this? Can you do this? I always knew that in most cases we could, but I became the no guy in the industry. I was just saying no, no, no. And people would say, why? This is the price of the compound on the market. Surely it's more than what you're earning. And I would say, listen, I go back to what I learned best at Coke, the importance of focus and prioritization. For me, it was critical to scale the manufacturing side of our business and to get the technology to a level of maturity that ultimately we had the confidence to be able to scale it, to develop consistently, predictably with that blueprint, to only then to say, okay, now we're ready to open it up because we've mastered the technology. We've got the level of maturity that we can deliver what we say we can do. So that's really now the process. And today, I deal with the really interesting deal flow of compounds. I tell you, my job every week, I'm seeing opportunities and it's weighing up what life-changing compounds we want to go after. Because at the end of the day, there's only so much R&D resource. Obviously, we can flex up a lot on the R&D side, but we've got to build this in a methodical way. So we've made very, very strategic choices. The choice of partnering with Tate & Lyle in the context of the next generation of non-nutritive sweetener, to me, this is a life-changing compound. We know that the challenges, look at the American population, sedentary lifestyle, basically too much sugar consumption. Wow, can you imagine if we come up with a non-GMO, non-nutritive sweetener that has a great taste because we magnified the important molecules, which are really good, and we suppress some of the stuff that makes stevia a little bit more challenging for many people. If we can get that compound to market, it'll change the whole food system.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it will change many aspects of people's overall health and wellness challenges.
Yeah, that's interesting. We've been looking at sugar alternatives. We spoke with Ali Wing of Oobly. They're looking at the sweet protein. I'm sure if you heard of that. But I'm curious, in regards to your entry into sweeteners, was this something that came because the partner reached out to you, or did you have this in your R&D? And is there a certain plant that inspired this compound? If that's IP, I totally get it. But
yeah, I can see you're fishing a little bit here. It's okay. I'll go a little bit with you, but not too far.
Great. Thank you.
So we were introduced to Tate & Lyle. They're an amazing company through a mutual, let's call it a mutual friend, mutual partner. We had the opportunity to really spend quality time with an amazing management team and really inspiring leadership that are so focused on doing what's right from an overall sustainability and making sure that we just preserve all the critical resources in the world. And a couple of things. They have a really strong science-based organization that had done a lot of investigation in the last 10 to 15 years, and they had identified some plants with very high levels of sweet proteins that could be the next generation of non-nutritive sweetener, but they didn't have the technology that was able to be the bridge between those plants and bringing those compounds in a scalable way to be able to democratize for the broader food and beverage system. Once they understood our technology, they understood our scale, they understood our maturity, they understood the intricacies of how the technology worked, they realized that maybe they had found the bridge, that critical bridge that they've been looking for. And hence we forged the partnership. I can tell you that we recently sourced that plant, and for the last week and a half, 10 days, our R&D team have been working like crazy on doing the initial stages of our proprietary tissue culture stage. There's a lot of excitement and belief around it because it's so important. Those secrets, they lie out there in the plant kingdom. And that's the challenge that we have, to utilize our technology to unlock those secrets that ultimately we've been given, depending on whether you believe in God or you believe in other theories. There are 500,000 plants out there that each inside them, they contain such unique phytomedicinal compounds that are so important for our overall health and wellness. It's just up to us now as human beings to find ways to responsibly access that treasure that lies inside those plants. That's where our technology really fits a critical sweet spot right now.
No pun intended.
Yeah. No, thanks for putting it that way, Ilan. And I think that was beautifully put. One of the things that we talk a lot about on Grow Everything is biomanufacturing and how biology is really an infrastructure layer. It's not just a source of products, even though I totally agree with what you just said. There's so much biological knowledge out there that we just don't have. And thinking about you coming from Coca-Cola, you're now at BioHarvest. For us, the vision is eventually you partner with Coke, and every Coke manufacturing facility has a BioHarvest facility next to it, either producing a sweetener or key ingredients for their products. How do you envision BioHarvest contributing to that shift where biomanufacturing becomes just as fundamental as any other kind of manufacturing or even industrial agriculture?
Wow. This is the $1 billion question.
Trillion.
All right.
Trillion. Let's just get it straight.
Yeah.
Billion's nothing anymore.
You can put B's, capital
Capital
T's. You
It's a
can
T.
put profanities before it, which we won't talk about on the podcast. But this is where my belief as a CEO and as a father and as somebody who's deep in the spiritual stage of my career, I go to bed at night and I close my eyes and I say, Ilan, you've got a gift from God in your hands. Don't mess it up. I'll explain to you why. Because the vision of putting BioHarvest plants, multiple plants on every continent in the world is ultimately in our master plan. And we built a master plan for our company, which in the next few months I will share with our investor base with 3 phases. At the end of phase 3 of that master plan, there will be basically biological manufacturing plants that you talked about, Karl. We will have multiple of them across all continents, partnering with biggest pharmaceutical companies, biological therapeutic solution companies, all the way through to nutrition companies. What's critical is economic rationalism. This is where biotech, unfortunately, has not been able to conquer the hill, where biotech has normally just fallen flat on its whatever. This is the reason why, go back to the beginning of this podcast, when I invested in this company, was probably one of the top 3 reasons why I invested in this company and why I had such belief in this technology. And I'm going to articulate it and help you understand it in the following way. About 1.5 kilometers, you guys think in miles, so I don't know, like 3/4 of a mile from where I am right now, is our existing facility, which is a 25-ton facility, annual tonnage.
Amazing.
We built that facility for $5 million US. That facility today at full capacity, based on what we generate with a direct-to-consumer business from our vineyard, let's say we generate around about $2,800 a kilo. So it's about $60 to $70 million of revenue. $5 million one-time capex generates $60 to $70 million of revenue on an annual basis.
Wow.
That is software economics
Yeah.
in biotech. Okay. We're going to build 100-ton facility where I am right now, 1.5 kilometers, 0.7 of a mile from our existing 25-ton facility. So we're 4Xing it. That facility will cost us right now. We're busy finalizing the conceptual design, about to move into detailed engineering design work. It should be up and running in phase one of that facility in 12 months' time. That facility all in will cost us about $17 million to produce a facility that can generate, and I'm keeping it at consistent comparison. If you take $2,800 a kilo, it's $280 million. And a facility that costs $17 million one-time capex, at full capacity, that facility can generate $280 million of revenue a year. And you're still, this is really important, we're still able to democratize the compound and get the compound in people's hands on less than $1 a day a capsule. Okay, you pay $6 for a Starbucks coffee when I was in New York last week, plus tax. Okay, so this is where we call ourselves fast and efficient biotech. And this is the critical pivot that all of us in the biotech world have to figure out, is how do we scale our technology from a CapEx perspective to be able to generate the kind of return on CapEx, return on assets that makes sense for the industry in a way that you're still able to democratize the output that you're producing for the world. This is the holy grail of rational economics, of how we can really start to execute on that vision of biological manufacturing plants all around the world. Being able to have the positive impacts of all those technologies really landing in the hands of consumers in Africa, consumers in South America, consumers in Western and Eastern Europe. This is what the critical challenge is, and this is what excites me most about our technology. That really anchors into the vision of the company, where we have this amazing relationship between CapEx and production, and the economic rationalism is there. It also creates a virtuous cycle because the investor world is willing to get behind it. And then importantly, and it goes back to what we talked about, sustainability is at the core. Ultimately, when you can do this in an effective way, that you're able to realize carbon credits, biodiversity credits, then all of a sudden you build a flywheel for the business that really precipitates that virtuous cycle and allows you to build more and more and give more and more and democratize more and more and really start to change the world. And then tying back to longevity, these are life-changing compounds that ultimately, from the food we eat to even the makeup we put up on our skins, the next generation of basically topical solutions, all the way to pharma indications, we can really make the world a better place. We can really do it. That's why I go to sleep at night saying, we can do it, but we got to climb Mount Everest and back another 10 times, but we can do it. Probably the last thing I'll leave you with, the reason why I can wake up in the morning energized, this is the gift as well, which is not normal in a biotech business. I have the gift of a direct-to-consumer business, and every day I'll get 50 to 60 reviews. As CEO of this company, I read every single review comes into my inbox. It's not exhausting, it's inspiring. Because when you're lying in bed at night exhausted after a challenging day, I just go in and I read the reviews, and everybody can go to vineyard.com, read the reviews. We have more than 8,500 reviews, and just read what people say about how our compound, our red grape cell vineyard compound, is changing their lives. This is what you have the inspiration every single morning just to get up and do it again, so that we can create really a legacy for the world. And this is what BioHarvest DNA is all about.
That's amazing. I'm going to be a subscriber. You're a great salesperson. I have to ask the last question is, do you get high on your supply? I mean, are you taking Vinia?
Look, I'll be really open. I take 2 Vinia every single day for the last 5 years. It's totally changed my life in many respects, specifically on the brain fog side. I used to be one of those people that today they call it decision fog.
Yeah.
And I used to wake up by 11 o'clock and 3 coffees, I could start to function. Now I have the opposite problem, Erum. I'll get up in the morning at 4 o'clock to go to the bathroom, and drives my wife crazy. I'll check my phone because I can open up the phone and I'll see WhatsApp. As a business, we follow the sun with people all around the world. And invariably there's work to do. And then I'm in bed sitting on my phone working, and I'm sharp. I'm sharp. That's really the power of blood flow.
Yeah. Oh, so
Amazing.
good. Great ad.
Well, Ilan, thank you so much. This has been an inspiring, incredible interview. I knew when I met you last year that we were going to have a good interview. This exceeded my expectations 1,000-fold. So thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. You guys touched on points that help bring out the best in me. And after a long day here in Israel, I appreciate that. And I really enjoyed the dialogue.
Yeah, we have to have you back on. After the next facility gets built and we talk about this distributed biomanufacturing, we definitely want to keep talking to you about it because you guys have it nailed in a way that we haven't heard anybody talk about it yet.
Thank you. Appreciate all your support.
Hi, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Messaging Lab, the force multiplier for biotech. Your biotech company is making the world a better place. You know that, we know that. But does the world? There's a big reason why some biotech companies attract investors, sign up customers, and get attention. That reason is strategic communications. At Messaging Lab, we translate complex science and economics into compelling narratives. And we have done that for the most successful biotech companies across healthcare, agriculture, personal care and beauty, materials, and the list goes on. We're here to make sure your ideas not only get heard, but resonate with your audience. So if it's time to amplify your company's voice, visit messaginglab.com to explore how we can elevate your story and grow your business. All right, Karl, what did you think of that episode?
I think you could tell at the beginning I was enthusiastic about having Ilan come and talk to us. I am more impressed by what BioHarvest is doing than before we talked to him. Like I said, I love new business models applied to biotech. Direct-to-consumer business models are very challenging. However, in the nutraceutical space, I think there is probably a playbook that you can follow to be successful. And then when he talked about the facilities that they're building and the amount of revenue that they generate, I was just, okay, let's go. What did you think?
Yeah, I love that. I was super impressed by the fact that he was sharing his production and scale up strategy, that he has a 25-ton facility and that generates $60 to $7 million. And then
It's crazy.
It's crazy. Yep. And then that they're going to put $17 million into the next facility and that'll generate $280 million. So just having that level of numbers and being like, okay, this is what one facility will generate. I think when investors hear that gets them excited. They're like, okay, look, you did the math and you're sharing the math, not on like, oh, this is how much it costs to engineer strain. This is the small volumes. And you're not thinking in real big terms and input and output. You're putting $17 million in, you're going to get $280 million out. That's simple, easy to understand.
Totally. Yeah. And the other thing I will just comment on is I love that Ilan and his team are so focused on execution. And when we asked the question about what does it look like when your facility is next to Coca-Cola, I think he was a little surprised because no one had ever asked him that question. And yet it fits into the way that we think in terms of distributed biological manufacturing and the way that we see the future evolving. These facilities, like what Ilan and his team are doing, can be containerized, like Massimo Portincasa talks about in our previous episode, containerized and put on location where these factories are that are building something. And that is really going to be a game changer across the board. I think Michelle of Cauldron also talked about that. Mm-hmm. So go back to those episodes if you really want to do your homework. But I just love that Ilan was a little bit taken in a positive way by our question. And hopefully you listeners, you can see the way that we think and the way that we actually do that stuff with our clients.
Yeah. After we recorded the interview, he stayed on and talked to Ilan a bit. And he was just like, that was so great. I really appreciate the questions. Those questions help me think broader because when you're grinding away and scaling up a company on one product, you don't have as much opportunity to really think bigger. So coming on our podcast and being able to riff on some bigger ideas, it's something we do here. We just love talking about how we can level up and not just do business as usual, but do new types of business. How do we look on really changing the game? And sometimes you do have to take existing playbooks, but let's make some new playbooks. We had a really good conversation after we recorded, so off the record, to be able to really think big with Ilan and what's in the future for BioHarvest.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting. And I think the time is now.
Yeah, yeah. So cool. I mean, the Vinia product, the resveratrol, to be able to have as many subscribers as he does. I want to try it. I will say that I have my AI that I've been talking to about my health that has my 23andMe raw data and the results of my blood test and everything. And I'm like, should I take resveratrol? Obviously, consult with your physician.
Right.
Oh, God. I don't know if I should be saying this, but okay. Only the Grow Everything listeners get a little bit of my personal healthcare information, but my blood pressure is a little bit on the low side. So it's saying resveratrol, since it does help with opening up your vessels and might lower my blood pressure more. So I was
Wow.
like, okay, so just be careful, talk to your doctor in the end. So I'm like, okay, in the end, just talk to your doctor. But at least I'm coming to the doctor with some ideas. I'm giving my doctor a playbook to review rather than just
Yeah.
saying, am I healthy?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, just wanted to share that. I'm not blindly taking supplements, but for those that have high blood pressure, it sounds great. Again, we're not doctors. We just play one on a podcast.
Yeah, not even.
Not even. Yeah, exactly.
This is not financial and not health advice.
We're not Dr. Oz.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I went there.
Yeah, you went there. Okay, so I think that's the pod for this week. As always, if you want to leave us any questions, we do put the Grow Everything hotline number in the notes. Please get in touch with us. We love hearing from our audience. We've been getting some really nice feedback. And we've been actually getting some really interesting people approach us in terms of being guests. We do have a full guest list already, but it's always nice when someone shows up that we don't know or haven't added to the list.
Absolutely. Cool. All right, Karl. So what is it?
I think that's the pod.
Nice.